My name is Willis Lamb, Field Supervisor of the LRTC Technical Large Animal Rescue Team in northwestern Nevada. We are an all-risks team that covers multiple counties. We respond to between 400 and nearly 600 incidents per year, depending upon conditions. The purpose of this video is to share some of the techniques that we use to extricate large animals from mud and related bogs. Nearly all of the incidents have involved horses, so the term horse will be used to apply to all large animals in general. Mud rescues and extricating bogged horses can be particularly challenging. Access may be difficult. By their very nature, muddy situations and bogs create stability issues. How we approach a horse bogged in a lake would be different than approaching a horse down in mud or resulting from a flood. There are, however, a few basic concepts that apply to all of these situations. After sizing up the scene, it's critical to secure and stabilize the scene. Establish cold, warm, and hot zones, and the only people entering the warm and hot zones should be those performing tasks inside those zones. Stabilization includes establishing safe access and egress for responders, such as providing ground pads, rigging safety lines, marking hazards, and establishing a safe but close area to cache out equipment. The horse needs to be secured and stabilized. By the very nature of a bog, most of the time a horse is not going to go anywhere. However, there can be situations where a horse that is rolled over on its side can flail about and get into deeper trouble. Also, the horse's airway must always be protected. An obvious objective is to develop an extrication plan. How can the horse be secured? What will be the rigging system? What can be used as an appropriate anchor point? Would jetting wands be required? Where and how will the horse be landed on solid ground? We must organize personnel and resources effectively to execute the extrication plan. We must evaluate progress and adjust as necessary. Of course, once the extrication has been accomplished, attention should turn to the horse's aftercare. Here is an example that a bystander managed to photo document. In this mud rescue, this mare had turned over onto its side and was pinwheeling trying to get out. The first responders arrived well ahead of the main rescue team and equipment. They managed to rope the horse to stop the pinwheeling. As is so often the case, the mare was exhausted and unable to keep her head up. These responders happened to have a couple of lengths of 2x4 lumber in their pickup, and they used them to keep the mare's nose above water, preserving her airway until she could be extricated. With this bogged Belgian draft horse in Lake Lahontan, holiday beachgoers used an inner tube to keep the horse's head above water until we arrived. But all too often, a response to a rescue becomes a recovery because the horse becomes exhausted and drowns before our arrival. Therefore, whatever we can do on arrival to preserve the horse's airway while we're setting up is a high priority. Let's talk for a moment about the equipment that we would deploy. Ground pads are critical for a number of rescue types, with mud and trench rescues and cattle guards being the most common. All of our response vehicles carry ground pads. Particularly in soupy mud, slip sheets are useful as they are thin and wide, although they provide less traction than ground pads. In this operation, we're actually walking on slip sheets under the water so we won't get stuck. Jetting wands, called mud lances in the UK, are critical for breaking suction around legs and hooves. If a horse is slightly pitched to its side, but its legs are still stuck, we can just jet away the muck while lifting the legs with straps, then extricate the horse on its side. We mark our jetting wands for every foot of length so that we can accurately estimate where the tips are located. The Nicopolis needle can be very useful for getting under a bogged horse in order to pull back a recovery strap. It is also water supplied so that it can more easily slip through muck. For locations where water for jetting cannot be accessed, an 80 cubic foot scuba tank with a regulator can provide air for jetting. Just remember that air is compressible while water is not, so air jetting in mud will likely involve mud splatter as bubbles come up. An air supply kit carries a regulator, a 4-way valve set, air hose, some floating ropes, webbing, and even a tire pressure gauge and tire inflator. The jetting wands are supplied by 4 25-foot RV garden hoses, run from the 4-way valve to the wands. When jetting, be sure to start the water and air before pushing the wand into the muck, or it can plug up and then will be difficult to clear. When developing a strategy for a bogged horse in mud, there are a few issues to consider. You have to understand the consistency of the material that has entrapped the horse. You have to be able to approach the horse without getting stuck yourself. You have to decide how you're going to extricate the horse. Can the horse simply be dragged clear, or are its legs and hooves caught, creating a suction issue requiring jetting wands? How can the extrication straps be deployed? Can overhead lifting be used, or will it get stuck in the muck? What is available to use as an anchor point? What other equipment needs to be dispatched to the scene? Our dispatch protocol calls for a minimum of 2 response units, which would be the closest to rescue unit and our TLA, our heavy rescue unit. Typically, a 4-wheel drive pickup would respond in order to shuttle equipment from the heavy rescue if it can't make it close to the scene. A transport trailer may also be warranted if it's likely that the horse would be transported to a veterinary facility. It's important to plan what gear you'll likely need so it'll be at the scene for immediate use. While some incidents may be simpler and require less gear, the standard cash out for us would include ground pads, slip sheets, a rescue glide, a lariat, recovery straps, at least 1 utility rope rescue kit, a Nicopolis needle, jetting wands with hoses, a flexible strap guide, J-hooks, and cat tongs. Typically, when we cash out rope gear, the webbing bag and prusik bag are also deployed. A Becker rescue sling might be appropriate if a vertical lift is possible. A blanket should be available in case the horse needs temperature stabilization following extrication. When working over a trench or pit, safety harnesses and taglines should be used. In the event the horse is bogged in water, personnel should be wearing rescue-certified PFDs, and a Becker water rescue harness should be cashed out in case it's needed. Here are some of the things that we need to do. Provide safe access to the horse. Ground pads and slip sheets should be standard, as boggy sediment can get rescuers hung up and shoes or boots pulled off. Boggy patches underwater, such as in lakes, can be less obvious. Footwear can be an issue. If it's not feasible to provide ground padding, rescuers will sometimes get stuck themselves. Although it's clearly not recommended, we have had to work lake extrications barefoot, so our footwear would not cause us to get stuck. For practical purposes, we train using a mud-filled trench and a bucket loader or similar equipment to practice securing a horse and learning how that releasing suction with jetting wands can improve the ability to lift the training mannequin out of the mud. However, in reality, mud rescues are not so basic, so we have to understand all of the physics involved and adapt. In some bogs, trying to dig the horse out could result in the horse sinking further. A clear sign of this possibility is the horse having sunk all the way to its belly, with the bulk of its body preventing it from sinking further. These worst-case scenarios do happen. Our action plan has to consider whether the lifting apparatus can make it to the scene, and once there, apply a lift without the apparatus itself becoming mired or unstable. We may end up using jetting wands to more or less hydraulically mine the legs free while suspending them with straps, causing the horse to settle onto one side. This approach does work, but control of the head to preserve an airway is paramount when repositioning the horse onto its side. And this type of jetting process does use a great deal of water. Get a backup water supply on the way. We require a suitable anchor point. My personal preference is to park a rescue unit or pickup in an appropriate location, then extend the winch cable to use as an extended anchor point. I'll now have a very reliable anchor. I also prefer to extend the cable for as long of a distance as is practicable, as it makes force vectoring more effective if we need to utilize a combination of force vectoring and mechanical advantage, or we need to force vector to achieve a slight change of direction. A 5-to-1 system would be connected between the winch cable and the recovery strap on the horse. Whether we would employ a forward assist or sideways drag would depend on the position of the horse. Either way, the horse should be landed onto a rescue glide or slip sheet to be moved to a suitable recovery location. At that point, the horse should be left calm, providing protection from further heat loss until it's recovered sufficiently to rise on its own, or until veterinary intervention designed to mitigate decreased core temperature has been achieved. Hypothermia occurs more commonly than most responders realize, so the urge to get the horse to move, wash it off, and so forth should not supersede proper hypothermia protocols. Following extrication, aftercare by a qualified large animal veterinarian is absolutely recommended, although with our range horses it's not always possible, so we have to follow protocols as closely as practicable. Other options for extricating the horse could include using a bipod. However, careful consideration must be given with respect to properly securing the foot plates in potentially sketchy soil conditions before using a bipod for any vertical lift. Regardless as to the resources you have available at the time, and although time is of the essence, mud and bog rescues warrant an appropriate size up and safety precautions to be put in place as the extrication plan evolves. And thanks for watching this video. We hope it has provided some useful material. For more information, please visit lrtcrescue.org.